We'll see. Great match for British Eurosport. It's back to Chris and Valerie in the studio.
Yeah, and our thanks to Simon and Chris. What a match, and it's his first time in the Aussie Open semi-finals.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, the score flattered to deceive. I mean, Dominic hrbaty played heroic stuff. He gave Rafter a much better run for his money than I gave him credit before the match. I thought there'd be one close set, and then it would be plain sailing. In the end, it was plain sailing, but you know, that match had so much and could be a great instructional video for any coach.
Yeah, I mean, the final set wasn't a reflection on the rest of the match at all, was it?
Not at all. I mean, he really did push him, and at one time, it was always tough to call, but at one time, you really felt hrbaty was going to go on to win it. But Rafter, he just stuck in, and it was interesting that when hrbaty, as they were saying in the commentary, had changed his game plan so much, that was the key turning point. When he started to falter at the back end to go, you know, into that third set, then Rafter really did take a stranglehold of the match and won 12 out of the last 13 games, which is ridiculous when you look at the first half of the match.
Yeah, Rafter showed him quite a lot of respect early on in the first set because he knows hrbaty's ground strokes. That's what he's known for. That's where he's gained his reputation so far, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so, and no better evidence than here. He's looking for a way in, Pat Rafter, standing well back, and he sort of hedged to go in a couple of times, particularly very early on. And don't forget, these two have never played each other before, so both really having a feel and getting a look of the game plans. You know, this one, he could have gone in, but no, he's not going. Maybe I'll get past. And in the end, that hesitancy stopped Rafter early on from getting into the sort of rhythm.
But if we're talking about a serve volleyer, is there a better volleyer in the game than Pat Rafter at the moment?
I don't think there's ever been a better first volleyer.
Right.
I mean, it's unbelievable what he picks up off great returns. And this is where the match, for me, had the best of the battles. It was the hrbaty return and the, you know, the net covering of Rafter, and it's what made it such a great encounter.
And then, of course, he took control in this first set, didn't he? Getting the early break in.
Yeah, I mean, he really did work it out so well. He's just moving back well behind the baseline here. Look at Rafter now, just saying, I'm going to make hrbaty play loads of balls. He's getting a great length off the ground. I expected that. But as soon as I get a slightly shorter ball, I'll up the pace, but anything deep, I'm just going to chip it back and make him play.
It really was a terrific match. We saw some great rallies and some great shots from both players, forcing the error there from hrbaty. But we saw one break back from hrbaty late on in that set that, of course, Rafter took, but it showed how dangerous he was going to be in the next set.
Yeah, I mean, that pickup was just extraordinary. But the damage was done with the return.
Yeah.
And Rafter must have been thinking here, my goodness me, I'm 5-1 up, and this guy just won't go away. And he was just getting better and better. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, it looked almost, though, after that first set, what was it, 6-4, that Rafter would run away with it there. He had the makings of it, and hrbaty was, as you picked up, as Chris picked up, as Simon picked up, was playing a different game. He was coming in and he was trying to volley. Yeah. Why was he doing that?
I think he just felt that Rafter had worked it out so well that the only chance he was going to have was to reverse the situation and take the net away from Rafter. So you can understand the logic behind it. And it certainly worked for a period of time, but as soon as he faltered, it fell apart. Now, if he'd maintained it throughout the rest of the match, could it have been different? You know what my answer to that's going to be? No, because it's not hrbaty's natural way of playing, and it scared him as well.
Yeah, he's a very, very talented player. I mean, from the last 3 hours or so, we've just seen that, and at the beginning of the second set, I think we got a lob that he fooled Rafter, and Simon was saying, not many people lob Pat Rafter.
Yeah, and it was doing the damage, wasn't it? I mean, it's a super illustration of the turmoil that Rafter was going through. I mean, that is a unique sight, seeing Rafter turned, wrong-footed, and in the end left forlorn on the court. It was a wonderful disguise because he'd been passing all the time and suddenly he produces the topspin lob.
Went for the swipe, couldn't quite get it. So he had his break points. This is the first one and one of the rallies of this match.
Yeah, incredible coverage from Rafter. I think anybody that plays against Pat Rafter should go and find a practice wall and just hit with it for 20 minutes because it's as frustrating as that. He is a wall at the net.
And hrbaty then had a chance to, with a second break point. It was pretty soon after this, though, wasn't it?
It was a couple of points straight away. And this is what was so impressive about hrbaty. He just fought, he hung in. And I think Chris said right at the beginning, he's playing a confident man, Rafter, and that's what hrbaty showed for 2.5 sets of this match, full of confidence, and he looked like a man who genuinely believed he was going to beat Rafter.
And that was that second break point I was talking about, just went long, and you would have expected him to have made that. And
he expected it too. There was a look of shock on his face when it was called long, but on the replay, it was clearly long.
How had it that hrbaty had put so much pressure on Rafter in this set, do you think?
I think it was a combination of very few unforced errors coupled with enormously high percentage of first serves in. I think in this match, as we see Rafter making his move there to try and break up the rhythm of hrbaty, hrbaty's serve, for me, the best I've ever seen him serve.
Yeah.
His first serve percentage was phenomenal. I mean, it went at the end, but put his first serve percentage with continued returning like that, and you can see the problems that this great Australian had.
Some of these shots from hrbaty, I mean, that backhand is just phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a wonderful
I say it's phenomenal, but what do you think as, you know, expert on the game?
It's an amazing shot, and his return of serve is one of the best of the game, up with Andre Agassi's. And, you know, Rafter just did so well to stay focused and positive. But I've never seen Rafter look so doubtful about whether or not to serve and volley. He changed his game plan and stayed back behind his serve. And that's when I thought the match was really changing big time.
Yeah, do you think both players played to the top of their form in the third set as well? Because, I mean, the second set was great. I mean, you were saying, you know, kids should be watching this as a coaching manual.
Oh, very much so, because there were so many talk points in this one match. You could create a whole manual. Yeah. And very many side issues too. And that was when Pat Rafter started to feel a little bit better, had a bit more time. He started to feel that he'd got the game plan sorted in his mind, even though it was a set all at this stage. But hrbaty kept coming back at him.
Well, he kept doing. The incredible thing was, just when you thought Pat Rafter was coming back, hrbaty would produce shots that you just think, well, anyone can take this game.
Yeah. I mean, and I think there, Rafter was almost a little bit slow. I mean, he normally is so quick to anticipate and pick the passing shots, and normally this is one Pat would have made, and there's evidence of that great first volley. But the pass in the end was just too good.
Because, of course, hrbaty broke early, Rafter broke back, then this was the crucial incident, wasn't it, at 5-all?
Very much so. This really was huge. The big let cord that gave Pat plenty of time, but he didn't choke. And that's not as easy. He had a lot of time to think about missing that shot, but he never took his eyes off the ball for 1 second. Made the decision to run round his backhand because he knew he could hurt so much more with his forehand, and went for the clean winner and made it.
Do you think that was the point where hrbaty's head went down and thought, I'm not going to win this match anymore? Or do you think he still had, you know, hope in that fourth set? Because certainly from the love perspective, you wouldn't have thought so. Yeah,
I think he was still hopeful at that stage. I think once he'd gone 2-1 down, having been 4-1, a break up in the third, and then Rafter doing so well to change things around, that probably broke his heart.
Yeah.
To go 2-1 down was very damaging. It would have been like losing that tie break. I mean, again, Simon and Bales were saying in the commentary that if hrbaty did not win the second set, with the way he'd been playing, which was quite outstanding, it would have probably been 3 sets. And the third set then took on that role of importance, particularly because he'd been 4-1 up with a break.
And in the fourth set, well, you were just purring about some of Rafter's volleys.
Oh, I mean, again, it was just, he'd gone back to really play at his best around the net. And that's what I mean about anticipating. He just waited perfectly. And the look on his face there, sort of suggesting, I'm there. As long as I just keep doing what I'm doing, I'm home. I've ridden the storm. I've now got his number. But hrbaty didn't give up at all, did he?
No, we didn't. I mean, I tell you what, I mean, I didn't know too much about him before this tournament. But looking at him against beating Safin, getting to this stage and putting up such a fight against Pat Rafter on match point here, he's certainly one for the future, isn't he?
Very much so. He'd be disappointed he's lost today because he knows that he's played extremely good tennis, but at the end of the day, I think he'll just accept that Pat Rafter dug deep and just did enough to come through.
Terrific win. Aussie favourite now, Leighton Hewitt is out. He's also your favourite for the title as well. But, yeah, I was
breathing heavily
a little bit, wasn't it?
Breathing heavily.
Yeah, interesting point. But Rafter now, of course, we don't, you know, he's going to either take on Martin or Agassi. Who do you think he'd want to take on in that respect? That's
a good question. I mean, in Agassi, he's got a similar style opponent to hrbaty. One thing is for sure that if Agassi, if he does come through, will not serve and volley against Pat Rafter if things don't go well for him. In Todd Martin, you've got a man with a huge serve, and if he beats Sampras and Agassi back to back, then he's going to prove to be an enormous opponent for Pat Rafter in the next round. Because of those 2 wins, Pat Rafter's going to think, hey, this guy must be playing the tennis of his life.
Absolutely. Well, I was just teeing you up there because we've got that Agassi-Todd Martin match later on this afternoon. So, 2 quarter-finals decided. After the break, we look back to the wee small hours of the morning. We find out who would join Lindsay Davenport in the last 4 of the Women's Championship, Celes or Capriati.